Hi, fifth graders. So yesterday we had Talk come to the rescue because time flies. So Talk was able to fly everybody down to safety from the castle in the air. Because time flies. And remember, time flies is an idiom, which means that time goes really fast. It doesn't actually fly, right? So we're going to start with chapter 19, which is the return of rhyme and reason. Sailing past 3 of the tallest peaks and just over the outstretched arms of the grasping demons, they reached the ground and landed with a sudden jolt. They made it. Quick, urged Talk, follow me. We'll have to run for it. With the princesses still on his back, he galloped down the rocky trail, and not a moment too soon. For pounding down the mountainside in a cloud of clinging dust and a chorus of chilling shrieks came all the loathsome creatures who chose to live in ignorance and who had waited so very patiently. Thick black clouds hung heavily overhead as they fled through the darkness, and Milo, looking back for just a moment, could see the awful shapes coming closer and closer. Just to the left, and not very far away, were the triple demons of compromise, one tall and thin, one short and fat, and the third exactly like the other 2. As always, they moved in ominous circles, for if one said here, and the other said there, and the third agreed perfectly with both of them. And since they always settled their differences by doing what none of them really wanted, they rarely got anywhere at all, and neither did anyone they met. Jumping clumsily from boulder to boulder and catching hold with his cruel, curving claws was the horrible Hoppy in hindsight, a most unpleasant fellow whose eyes were in the rear and whose rear was out in front. He invariably leaped before he looked and never cared where he was going as long as he knew why he shouldn't have gone to where he'd been. So if you think of something in hindsight, you think of what happened beforehand and you realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that. So in hindsight, something might seem like a bad idea, even though at the time it sounded like it might be a good idea. So that's what hindsight is, and it can be a problem. And most terrifying of all, directly behind them, inching along like giant soft-shelled snails with blazing eyes and wet, anxious mouths, came the gorgons of hate and malice, leaving a trail of slime behind them and moving much more quickly than you'd think. Faster, shouted Talk. They're closing in. Down from the heights they raced, the humbug with one hand on his hat and the other flailing desperately in the air, Milo running as he'd never run before, and the demons just a little bit faster than that. From off on the right, his heavy, bulbous body lurching dangerously on the spindly legs, which barely supported him, came the overbearing know-it-all, talking continuously. The know-it-all usually talks and talks and talks and talks and doesn't let anybody else talk, and that's why that's a bad thing. A dismal demon who was mostly mouth, he was ready at a moment's notice to offer misinformation of any subject, and while he often tumbled heavily, it was never he who was hurt, but rather the unfortunate person on whom he fell. Next to him, but just a little behind, came the gross exaggeration, whose grotesque features and thoroughly unpleasant manners were hideous to see, and whose rows of wicked teeth were made only to mangle the truth. They hunted each other. They hunted together and were bad luck to anyone they caught. Riding along on the back of anyone who'd carry him was the threadbare excuse, a small, pathetic figure whose clothes were worn and tattered and who mumbled the same things again and again in a low but piercing voice. Well, I've been sick, but the page was torn out. I missed my bus, but no one else did it. Well, I've been. He looked quite harmless and friendly, but once he grabbed on, he almost never let go. Closer and closer they came, bumping and jolting each other, clawing and snorting in their eager fury. Tock staggered along bravely with rhyme and reason. Milo's lungs now felt ready to burst as he stumbled down the trail, and the humbug was slowly falling behind. Gradually, the path grew broader and more flat as it reached the bottom of the mountain and turned toward wisdom. Ahead lay light and safety, but perhaps just a bit too far away. And down came the demons from everywhere, frenzied creatures of darkness, lurching wildly toward their prey. And that prey, we're not talking about the prey where we prey with our hands. We're talking about predator and prey, or the person that is being hunted, which would be, in this case, Milo and Tock and the humbug and rhyme and reason. So here are some of those monsters that were just described. And all of those monsters are negative emotions and negative personality traits that people can have. And if that's all that they are, it's really, really bad. And all that they are is the negative traits that they are named after. And that's why they are known to be demons. Most real people are only those things every once in a while. From off in the rear, the terrible Trivium and the wobbly gelatinous giant, remember him, urged them on with glee, and pounding forward with a rush came the ugly Dilemma, snorting steam and looking intently for someone to catch on the ends of his long, pointed horns, while his hoofs bit eagerly at the ground. The exhausted humbug swayed and tottered on his rubbery legs, a look of longing on his anguished face. I don't think I can, he gasped as a jagged slash of lightning ripped open the sky and the thunder stole his words. Closer and closer the demons loomed as the desperate chase neared its end. Then gathering themselves for one final leap, they prepared to engulf first the bug, then the boy, and lastly the dog and his two passengers. They rose as one and suddenly stopped, as if frozen in midair, unable to move, staring ahead in terror. Milo slowly raised his weary head, and there in the horizon, for as far as the eye could see, stood the massed armies of wisdom, the sun glistening from the swords and shields, and their bright banner slapping proudly at the breeze. For a moment, everything was silent. Then 1,000 trumpets sounded, then 1,000 more, and like an ocean wave, the long line of horsemen advanced, slowly at first, then faster and faster, until with a gallop and a shout, which was music to Milo's ears, they swept forward toward the horrified demons. There's the army. There in the lead was King Azaz, his dazzling armor embossed with every letter in the alphabet, and with him the math magician. Brandishing a freshly sharpened staff, from his tiny wagon, Dr. Discord hurled explosion after explosion to the delight of the sound keeper, while the busy din collected them almost at once. Remember, the din collects the bad sounds. And in honor of the occasion, Chroma the Great led his orchestra in a stirring display of patriotic colors. Everyone Milo had met during his journey had come to help: the men of the marketplace, the miners of Digitopolis, and all the good people from the valley and the forest. The spelling bee buzzed excitedly overhead, shouting, "Charge! C-H-R-G-A-R-G-E! Charge! C-H-A-R-G-E!" Canby, who, as everyone knew, was as cowardly as can be, came all the way from Conclusions to show that he was also as brave as can be. and even Officer Shrift, mounted proudly on a long, low dachshund, galloping grimly along. Cringing with fear, the monsters of ignorance turned in flight, and with anguished cries too horrible ever to forget, returned to the damp, dark places from which they came. The humbugs sighed with relief, and Milo and the princesses prepared to greet the victorious army. "Well done," stated the Duke of Definition, dismounting and grasping Milo's hand warmly. "Fine job," seconded the Minister of Meaning. "Good work," added the Count of Connotation. "Congratulations," proposed the Earl of Essence. "Cheers," recommended the Undersecretary of Understanding. And since that's exactly what everyone felt like doing, that's exactly what everyone did. "It's who we should thank," began Milo, when the shouting had subsided, but before he could finish, they had unrolled an enormous scroll. And with a fanfare of trumpets and drums, they stated in order that, there's the scroll, a long piece of paper. "Henceforth and forthwith, let it be known by all men that rhyme and reason reign once more in wisdom." The two princesses bowed gratefully and warmly kissed their brothers, and they all agreed that a very fine thing had happened. And furthermore, continued the proclamation, the boy named Milo, the dog known as Tok, and the insect hereinafter referred to as the humbug are hereby declared to be heroes of the realm. Cheer after cheer filled the air, and even the bug seemed a bit embarrassed at having so much attention paid to him. "Therefore," concluded the Duke, "in honor of their glorious deed, a royal holiday is declared. Let there be parades throughout every city in the land, and a gala carnival of 3 days' duration, consisting of jousts, games, feasts, and follies." The 5 cabinet members then rolled up the large parchment and, with many bows and flourishes, retired. So, it's very exciting, right? That rhyme and reason are back. I do think that we do have a day yet of the Phantom Tollbooth. The Phantom Tollbooth. But exciting. Rhyme and reason are back, and Milo has been declared a hero. So he's really not too bored today, is he? All right, I will be here tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Be good for yourself, and bye.